Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. Sorry for the half-hour delay this morning. Just putting a few more things together for your viewing enjoyment. Happy Sunday. When we come back, what does it all mean? Yesterday, where do we go from here? We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist.
We're in this together. We're all going to stand together, and we'll be there for each other from coast to coast to coast.
Well, I'm not in this with you, Justin. I've never been in this with you. And you're not in this with us. You're a rich man from a rich family. You want this tariff war. You want this war with Donald Trump because you don't want to run against Pierre Poilievre or the Conservatives. You want to run against Donald Trump. And if it's not you running, your successor wants to run against Donald Trump, whether that's Mark Carney, who is a flaccid joke of a political leader, as I said yesterday, not fit to be a dog catcher, or Chrystia Freeland, the one with the Nazi grandfather, who pretends now to be so on side with Israel. It just makes you want to throw up. But Justin Trudeau delivered a performance of a lifetime last night. Now, I'll show a little bit about this, and I have to say, okay, please don't gag, don't get nauseous, but it's very important. Sometimes we wake up and we say, haven't we seen this before? It's like having a dream about September 1st, 1939, and waking up on September 1st and saying, there's going to be a war today. Well, we saw this coming with the tariffs. It was like a self-fulfilling prophecy because Justin Trudeau refused to do anything. And we're going to get into that refusal today again, because he didn't want to do anything. And he lied and lied and lied at this news conference yesterday. But at least he took questions, unlike Justice Hogue, who was covering up the Chinese interference, refused to answer or entertain a single question from even the friendly mainstream media. But at least Justin Trudeau did answer some questions. So first of all, I'd like to play a bit of this speech just to show you. If there were Oscars or Emmys or even Grammy Awards given to prime ministers for best performance, this would be Justin Trudeau's finest hour. He gets watery eyes at just the right moment. He talks about fighting with the Americans. Big historical error, though. The Americans were not exactly with us in Flanders. That was a little too early in the war, but his liberal speechwriters don't know history. They know that we were with the Americans on D-Day. And I'm surprised they knew we had Canadian troops in Korea. But anyway, let's listen to a bit of this. And I promise I won't torture you with too much of it. It's the questions and answers that are most significant.
Bonsoir. Good evening. Today, the United States informed us they will be imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States and 10% on Canadian energy. A decision that, should they elect to proceed with, should take effect on Tuesday, February 4th. Tonight, first, I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences.
Okay, speaking directly to Americans, our closest friends and allies. When is the last time you heard Justin Trudeau talk about the Americans as our closest friends and allies? This is a word game. He's playing a game with us right now because he wants you to think the Americans are our worst enemy and not an ally. Because that's how the Liberal Party has always played this game in the past. Basically, post Lester Pearson as Prime Minister. from Pierre Trudeau on, the Liberals have loved to paint the Americans as the boogeyman, as the enemy, as endangering a Canadian culture, whatever the hell that is, as endangering our autonomy, endangering our country. So Justin Trudeau's playing a game here.
You, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum. They will violate the free trade agreement that the President and I, along with our Mexican partner, negotiated and signed a few years ago. But it doesn't have to be this way. As President John F. Kennedy said many years ago.
Now, this is incredible. Whoever is writing Trudeau's speeches, I can't believe they have this much of a sense of history. Yes, John F. Kennedy did say this about Canada when he was visiting Canada. I think it was 1961, and Diefenbaker was prime minister. And they actually planted a tree in the front of Parliament Hill, which is still there today. And Kennedy was shoveling the dirt and actually put his back out. And he did not like Diefenbaker because Diefenbaker was very anti-American. Actually, Trudeau and Diefenbaker have a lot in common in that regard. But JFK, as much as he did not like the prime minister at the time, realized that Canada was a great ally. And this is very true, what Justin Trudeau is saying. I can't believe his speechwriters understood this.
Geography has made us neighbors. History has made us friends. Economics has made us partners. And necessity has made us allies. That rang true for many decades prior to President Kennedy's time in office and in the decades since. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of the Korean Peninsula, from the fields of Flanders to the streets of Kandahar, we have fought and died alongside you.
Now, this is his finest performance as a prime minister. Wonderful lines. In fact, I would say almost JFK-like lines. He's a little wrong about Flanders, but otherwise marvelous. This speech is designed to convince you that Trudeau really loves America. Can't understand what's going on here. There must be some mistake. And what is going on is really the usual aspect of Trudeau's mentality, which is to distract, project, and pretend it's somebody else's fault. This is the guy, remember, who said it's unfortunate Donald Trump won the last election because Kamala Harris should have won.
During your darkest hours, during the Iranian hostage crisis, those 444 days we worked around the clock from our embassy to get your innocent compatriots home. During the summer of 2005, when Hurricane Katrina ravaged your great city of New Orleans, or mere weeks ago, when we sent water bombers to tackle the wildfires in California. During the day the world stood still, September 11th, 2001, when we provided refuge to stranded passengers and planes, we were always there, standing with you, grieving with you, the American people. Together, we've built the most successful economic, military, and security partnership the world has ever seen.
Like I said, this is the best speech Justin Trudeau has ever delivered. And it's probably just in advance of his leaving, hopefully, the office. But is he sincere? Does he mean a single word of this? Or is this all projection about how he can't understand why these tariffs are coming to pass? And why are the Americans doing this to me? This is the narcissistic identity of Justin Trudeau coming to the fore. It's very personal. He can't understand why Donald Trump is doing this to him. It's really not about Donald Trump or the U.S. doing this to Canada. It's about Donald Trump doing it to Justin Trudeau, and he can't stand that. A little more of this, and then we'll get to the questions and answers, which are fascinating.
That has been the envy of the world. Let's take a moment to talk about our shared border. Our border is already safe and secure, but there's always more work to do.
Aha! Now, this issue came up during the questions and answers. This is the crux of the matter. And I'll just let him finish because he says it twice that evening. He repeats the lie twice, that Canada's border is secure and that he's got a plan, this $1.3 billion plan, which he fails to mention again, happens over 6 years.
Less than 1% of fentanyl, less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States come from Canada. But hearing concerns from both Canadians and Americans, including the American president himself, we're taking action. We launched a $1.3 billion border plan that is already showing results.
Aha! Wrong. It's already showing no results because you haven't even passed that $1.3 billion border plan in the House of Commons. And your $1.3 billion border plan, as I've outlined now for the last week, is over 6 years. You have devoted more money to the gun grab next year than you have to border security. This is a facade. This is a fraud. And you're lying to the Canadian people, and you're lying to Americans right now. You said here we are again. Sorry. Here, I had a brief technical problem there. We're back. Listen to this. The question about border security came up again.
And President Trump said in the executive order that it's about the border and fentanyl. Do you think that this is what it's about?
We have one of the strongest, more secure borders in the world between Canada and the United States. As I said, less than 1% of fentanyl going into the United States come from Canada. Less than 1% of illegal migrants going into the United States come from Canada. That doesn't mean there isn't more to do. And that's why we've invested $1.3 billion in strengthening our borders. And we're seeing.
There he goes. A lie again. He has not invested a single cent into securing the border. But wait, he talks about the fentanyl issue.
Past number of weeks, past couple of months, the numbers significantly decrease at the border already. We are making progress in working together, including sending joint teams over to China to talk about the precursor chemicals that get developed into fentanyl.
Did you just hear that? We talked about that yesterday. It's the first time I've heard Justin Trudeau admit China is getting the precursor chemicals into Canada. How were they getting in, Justin? He doesn't talk about that. Now, we played yesterday that clip talking about exactly what's going on with the Chinese basically controlling the ports of entry in Vancouver. Sam Cooper, who hopefully will be on the show next week, I've asked him again, has outlined this in detail. in his writing at the Bureau and in his book, Willful Blindness. And this is, Trudeau apparently just discovered this. But he's not putting two and two together. This is what Donald Trump knows about China, that China is consuming our Western ports with fentanyl precursors that can be then designed into fentanyl pills and shipped south. Justin Trudeau thinks that's might be an issue, but that's something we'll deal with. Donald Trump is saying, deal with it now. Don't send your silly engagement teams over to China because you love China. China helps you. I can't trust you on China. China is interfering in Canadian elections and in Canadian politics because you want them to. You're lying to us again, Justin Trudeau.
Across North America. There are things that we can and must do together, and I understand the preoccupation the American president has with fentanyl deaths. We share those preoccupations. We've seen far too many communities across our country devastated by toxic drug supplies, by fentanyl, by opioid addictions. We have taken action over the years, but we're happy to do even more with the United States to counteract this horrific tragedy. That's why we have committed to doing even more and working alongside. But this trade action against Canada is not the best way we can actually work together to save lives.
Okay, dummy up here. You acknowledge that there's more to the fentanyl problem you've ever acknowledged before. You keep saying it's 1%, 1%, 1%. Are you acknowledging now that there's a larger focus here? But it's got nothing to do with me. We'll work about that in the future. Trudeau has failed Canada.
What does it tell you about your relationship with President Trump that you've been trying to get a hold of him and he hasn't been speaking with you?
I think this is a time where we've all remarked on just how active President Trump has been in engaging with a wide range of topics in his first weeks in office. As you all know, I've had many good and substantive conversations with President Trump over the past months, where we've highlighted the work that we can do. Our ministers and officials have been engaging, in many cases like today, multiple times a day with their counterparts to talk through these issues, to move forward on areas of.
What was Melanie Joly up to multiple times today? What was that little backward glance about? But Trudeau admits Donald Trump won't take his phone calls. Donald Trump won't talk to him. Why does he not just bring the parliament back? Fall as the leader of his party, fall, let the government fall, and let's have new elections now. Does he not understand that Donald Trump doesn't recognize him as the leader of Canada? Donald Trump does not want to talk to him? Does he not get that?
We will continue to engage, and I will continue to be there to work with President Trump as we've worked together in the past. We've worked together to solve some pretty challenging issues over the years. I look forward to doing that again. There are a number of different industries and regions of the country that can have greater leverage over the United States. One thinks of the oil industry, for example. What is extremely important for me, and I think for all the premiers, is that no one region of the country or one industry carries a larger burden than anyone else in standing up for Canada.
Okay, I welcome your comments here. Because what is Justin Trudeau really saying? What does this mean? That he is going to allow Alberta to make decisions about its natural resources as the Constitution says it can? The Constitution which Justin Trudeau's father repatriated? Does he understand that much about the Constitution, that natural resources belong to the provinces? Is he saying Alberta has the right to make that decision? Or is he saying Alberta is getting off easy with 10%? They should be subject to higher suffering like the rest of Canada. Everything Justin Trudeau says can be taken two ways. He is an actor. Remember that. That's all he's ever done in his life. What is he really saying here? I invite your comments.
We need to all be in this together. This only works if Canadians are fully united from coast to coast to coast to stand up for this extraordinary and beautiful country.
Oh, it finally really, as we said at the very beginning, this is about standing behind not Canada, but Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. We all are in this together. You're not in this with us, Justin Trudeau. No, you're not. But you want Canadians to line up behind you and these other two behind you. Yes, there we are. Melanie Joly, Dominic LeBlanc, the entire Liberal cabinet. You want Canadians to line up behind you and your cabinet. And that's your solution.
And that's why, as we look at different measures, including non-tariff measures that we might move forward on, we will not be moving forward on issues that further divide the country, which is why we're working with all premiers to look at different ways we can encourage the Americans to step back from these trade actions.
Gillian Piper with Global News. Prime Minister, will you recall Parliament to pass a bill to help Canadian workers and end prorogation?
Okay, he's so concerned about the future of Canada after he's gone on now for 25 minutes about how his heart is bleeding for those Canadian workers. The Canadian middle class is going to suffer from this tariff. He won't bring Parliament back because it might interfere with the Liberal leadership campaign. It might interfere with his plans.
See from our strong response package, as we spoke about with premiers this afternoon and have for many weeks, we have the tools to be able to support Canadians through this challenging time as it stands. This is a moment for Canadians to pull together, including Canadians of all different political parties. This is a moment where we need to set aside our differences and focus on delivering for Canadians, standing up for Canadians, and protecting the most successful political, military, economic, and security partnership the world has ever seen.
Okay, nice distraction. I can't believe this. He's asked if he is that concerned about Canada and about these tariffs. He's cried crocodile tears. He's talked about Canada fighting with the U.S. on the beaches of Normandy, on the North Korean peninsula. He's talked about being heart and soul joined with America in so many ways. But he's not prepared to do what? Bring back Parliament? Because it might interfere with his political plan? It's incredible. Now, why do you think Alberta got 10%, not 25%? This is interesting. I think it's one reason is Daniel Smith was actually negotiating. Daniel Smith, the Premier of Alberta, who I am fighting to get on this show next week to talk about this, because Daniel Smith has been the only Canadian politician who's actually advanced positive, constructive ideas in this whole discourse. Pierre Poilievre has been absent without leave. He's been talking about all kinds of other issues, such as carbon tax Carney, and that's all very good, but he needs to be there on this issue right now. And Daniel Smith has been there. And this is why the U.S. needs Alberta crude, because its refineries are set up to refine Canadian oil. Look at this. Top U.S. refineries using the most Alberta crude. Look at those numbers. Look at those numbers. 95%. 92%. Billings, Montana. Yeah, This is from the Canadian Energy Center. Fantastic, fantastic. Let's have a look at some other slides to explain to you why the U.S. needs Canadian energy. Now, this is fascinating. I'm going to read this to you. I promise I won't squint. There's a mismatch of oil fields and refineries in the United States. A key fact is that while the country is vulnerable to a cutoff of Canadian oil, that isn't because it doesn't produce enough oil for its own needs. It produces more than it needs. And the U.S. is a net exporter. The problem for the U.S. arises when it comes to turning all that crude oil production into usable gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. There are about 130 refineries in the United States capable of refining over 18 million barrels of oil a day. But there is a mismatch between those refineries and the kind of oil the U.S. produces. And I've been telling you this all week. This is why Trump stalled on this 25% tariff on oil. This is why Trump suddenly backtracked on saying, we don't need Canadian oil. Yes, you do. Back in the 1980s and 90s, there were widespread fears that oil was running out. U.S. production was failing. And so the refining industry redesigned itself to be able to process Latin American oil coming principally from Venezuela. And this is precisely what happened. Notice how the curve has gone up. More and more Canadian oil exported to the U.S. because we produce the kind of oil that U.S. refineries can refine. It's more sulfurous. It's not sweet crude. Venezuela was out and Canada was in. Now, of course, I'm not going to read this whole slide to you. We're getting late in the show. But the problem is, what if Donald Trump received a guarantee or put out the feelers to Venezuela about Venezuelan crude substituting for Canadian crude? It's a possibility. And I wouldn't put it past Donald Trump. But that's exactly where we're at with this issue. I say, like I said at the beginning of the show, we're back. We're in a position right now where it's like waking up to a self-fulfilling prophecy. We know that this tariff is disastrous, potentially for both countries. This is the dumbest trade war in history. I said that yesterday. The Wall Street Journal had an editorial about that yesterday. The dumbest trade war in history. We've got to get out of this before people like you and I, who can't afford this, are taken down with the ego and the hubris exhibited by political leaders. I'd say 75% of it is Justin Trudeau's hubris and idiocy and lack of understanding, lack of comprehension, obdurance. But there's a little bit there of Donald Trump too, because this is insanity. Now look at this. I find this absolutely fascinating because I want to show this one first, actually. Chris Barber, my good friend from the Freedom Convoy, who will be on the show on February 14th, by the way. He'll be on the show for the whole show to talk about the anniversary, the third anniversary of Trudeau invoking the Emergencies Act. He did it on Valentine's Day, 2022. Yep, February 14th, 2022. Chris Barber, Big Red, will be on the show to talk about his memories of the Freedom Convoy and what that invocation of the Emergencies Act meant to him and Tamara Leach and the others around him at that time. I can't wait to do that interview. Chris is a wonderful guy, and I have learned so much from just listening to this guy, this truck driver philosopher who has so much to say about Canadian democracy that people in the ivory towers, that in academia, in the universities will never understand and will never even get to. But Chris pointed this out, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, February 1st. Canadians crying over a 25% tariff, but ignoring the 20% carbon tax increase on April 1st. Wow. You honestly can't make this stuff up. Do you understand that, folks? I don't know if the carbon tax will literally translate into a 20% increase in food prices. Of course, it's inflationary. Of course, it contributes to the increase in food prices. I'm not 100% sure it's going to mean 20%, but it could be. In fact, it could be more. But we're looking at 45%, potentially 45% increase in the price of goods in Canada because of the tariff combined with the next increase in the carbon tax. That is catastrophic. Now, this is where we're going with Mark Carney. I'm just going to show you, and the response is incredible.
The large polluters pay. And so what happens...
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, you know, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used. So anyway, so that's how much steel are you using these days, Todd?
All right, hold everything. I showed you this yesterday. But this has resonated across the country. What kind of an idiot is this? This is supposed to be some economic genius? This is the guy who was the governor of the Bank of Canada, governor of the Bank of England. He's an economist, and he doesn't understand that we still use steel. He thinks steel is somehow one of those products we used to use in the old days. Unless we're moving back to the Stone Age, we still live in a steel age, where steel is used in everything. Why did it take, I love this guy. I love both of these guys. General Rick Hillier, former Chief of Defense Staff, who I served under when he was Chief of Defense Staff, and I was a public affairs officer, the Canadian Air Force. Rick Hillier, who I've invited to come on the show next week, and I won't say, no, he's not an old friend. Our ranks kept us apart. I've talked to him several times at events over the years. But General Hillier says, how much steel do we use daily? In every car we buy, studs in every building where I live or work, every streetlight, bus, subway, diner, and stoplight that guides my waking hours. If that costs more, and it will, we pay more in both direct costs and taxes. How incredibly stupid is Mark Carney? Now, Dan McTeague, my old friend, who I will have on the show as well in the next couple of weeks to talk about the cost of the tariff, the energy cost of the tariff. He made the interesting note here, drop your non-plastic forks, your plastic dinner forks, Canadians. Your EVs have no steel in them, nor do your solar panel heat pumps or windmills. Carney isn't stupid. I'm not sure he's not stupid. Maybe he's just thinks... But he's hoping and running the fact that you are, and will even remotely consider him to lead undemocratically. Dan McTeague, that is brilliant. And that is exactly where we're at right now. We are facing a future with Justin Trudeau or somebody like Mark Carney who can't comprehend that we live in a society that still uses steel in everything. Mark Carney has been so divorced from reality for so long, living in the globalist world of the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, living in a cloistered world of globalists who don't understand how ordinary people live, that he doesn't know steel is still everywhere in our society. Now, is that stupidity? Is that ignorance? Or is that just mendacity? Does he just want to lie to you about everything? Maybe it's a combination of all three. But he sure as hell should not be given the keys to 24 Sussex. He should not be the next Prime Minister of Canada. It's bad enough having Justin Trudeau in that office. But I can tell you this. We need new elections. I'll say this again. And Pierre Poilievre, it's Sunday, but get the hell out of your seat and say something in support of Daniel Smith and say something in support of those Canadians who are going to vote for you in the next election. We need that now, like we've never needed your voice before. We can talk about carbon tax Carney and carbon tax Christia next week. Right now, we need your voice on this tariff issue. And we need your voice on how we're going to improve the border security. And the border security includes those Vancouver ports that are letting in the precursors to fentanyl. We need your voice right now, Pierre Poilievre, because you are the next prime minister. You are the prime minister in waiting, and we need to hear your voice today. Thanks for watching today, folks. God bless you on this Sunday. It's been a pleasure being with you. I'll be back again tomorrow. I've got some exciting guests lining up right now for the week. Keep joining. Keep resolving to resist. Keep fighting. And I'll be back tomorrow with all the news you need to know.